Hello there, my name is John Tojek, and this is an Xfrog in Maya tutorial covering how to build a tree. More specifically, we're going to look at the details of using Xfrog objects, branch, variation, and CurveNurbs to make one of the many realistic trees that you can find in the large Xfrog library representing over 3,000 plants. Here is a render of the Cassia Fistula, or golden shower tree, and that's what we use for our reference. This is part of the Asia library that Xfrog has online. When you purchase a library like this, you get 20 tree species, and each of these, like the golden shower, comes with 9 variations that range to show different stages of blossoming and growth, since this tree can look very distinct during different times of the year. This is the online catalog where you can find the Asia collection and many others. Now, it's time to get familiar with the Xfrog visor and the hierarchy of a complex tree. The truth is, the forms are merely repeating patterns of differently sized and shaped branches. I want to present a simple guideline on how to do this. Use many branches, duplicate, mix them up with Xfrog object variety. Number 2, on some branches, replace the path curved with an Xfrog CurveNurbs. And number 3, apply tropism almost everywhere. First thing I'm going to do is look at this example tree. We're going to take away the flowers just by grabbing the material and saying hide the flowers, then hide the leaves. And now we start looking at the hierarchy of a tree that already exists. This is the golden shower tree, and we're going to looking at how Xfrog built them, and we're going to sort of copy that and build it ourselves. I get out of the real-time rendering, the GPU render, and I see that it's just variation branch branch, variation branch branch, copied twice. And each time there's changes. So I'm going to make some of those smaller branches invisible and take a look at our main stuff. We really have some thick, low branches and then little complex branches on top. So let's just start. I'm going to start with that trunk right there, one tall thing. I make 3 branches. They land at the origin. I rename it to trunk. And these are called branch low 1 and 2. To scale them up, you scale just the curves. Remember, it's just an extrusion. So I've got my path curve as a straight line and a circle. I make the circles a little smaller, make the thing thinner, and I'm just trying to make the exact same trunk you see on the left-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and apply some shaders. I've got a simple trunk shader and then another wood shader. And I make one the child of the other. So now it branches out, and I play with thickness, the very first thing. By grabbing these control points, I'm changing the thickness from the bottom to the top of the central trunk. So instead of ending in a point, I make it more like a cylinder. And, I make it bigger at the bottom by adding a little point, and I leave a little variety in there. So it's not a perfect mathematical cylinder, but it's got a little bit of moving around. Then I can grab CVs, the little control vertices, and just move them around. This is one way to get away from having a perfectly straight cylinder. It gives a little bit of nature. Any way you want, you can change these things around. And I'm going to do the exact same process to the branches. So I make the circle smaller, they become smaller. Then I play with the thickness. So I give it another control point at the bottom, and I want it to be sort of a straight line, but not perfect, and no longer end in a point, and a little bit thicker when it touches the trunk. So now I'm getting sort of a basic tree look. The next thing we're going to play with is the growth. So I want them to be the same length from the top to the bottom. So I put the same number in each one. And now they're automatically the same length. Then I look into angle. I don't want them to stick off at 90 degrees. I want them to stick off at more of a pointing up type of angle. So as I adjust that curve, I can get any effect I want. Now, instead of using a normal curve, I'm going to use CurveNurbs. I replace the path curve for that branch with my CurveNurbs. So I just delete it. I select CurveNurbs, branch, and then in the family, you hit the plus sign. I now have a new path curve. This thing, I can adjust the length and the segments. It has more abilities than the other one. Another thing I can do is add tropism to only that path curve. I tell it to tropism up a little bit, and then I move the things, and that gives my branches more controls. Along with that, I can start playing with some noise in here. So here I've got my length scale, and then I'm going to do an X rotation. So now I'm bending the branches by moving the path curve, but I'm not moving CVs. I'm playing with CurveNurbs and all the different things you can do inside of CurveNurbs. All of those keyframes, all of those variables can be keyframed or put in an expression. Here I do noise with a U value and an I value, which allows you to have a different noise for each branch. And that gives me a little bit of random noise. That equation is just an example, and we can show more of those later. There are 6 dimensions, X, Y, Z, translate, and rotate, that I can affect on here. So I'll just do a little bit on each, and just to get a little bit of natural branching and random noise in there. So now I've got these 2 branches, and I'm going to make a copy of the complicated one. And then I'm going to put them both under the trunk using variety. So let's make a little variety node. And that thing will now go into the trunk. And then the 2 branches go inside the variety node. Hit child number 0 and then child number 1. And now those 2 branches, even though they're a little bit different, they're affected like one branch. I could make more children. Here's 3. And now I could have 3 random branches in there. So that's one very cool thing about variation. You can make things quite complex very quickly that way. So now one of the branches could be longer than the other, shorter than the other, or have a different material on them. This is just another way of adding very heavy complexity into the tree. Now I'm going to go to multiplication and give myself more of the low branches. And these are the thick main branches. I'm going to work on the shape a little bit more. And I'm just trying to make it look like the tree on the left-hand side. Let's go to the V-Ray renderer, throw in my sky background, and keep in mind that Xfrog is inside of Maya, so all the Maya features work exactly the same while you're in Xfrog. So that's just GPU rendering. And now I'm looking at the original tree. This is the one we're going to copy. And I'm going to try and define what are those things on the end of the branch. It's got some flowers and some leaves. So we need to build a little branch like that with flowers and leaves. So let's start from scratch. New branches again, 2 of them. I scale these guys up, and I'm going to build a smaller green part and then an upper yellow part. So I throw down, make them thin, make one the child of the other, and this is now branch medium and green. That's what I'll name these guys. And I put some materials on there, so it's a green and a branch. Then, just like before, I'm going to get rid of the spiky look. I'm going to, make it a little more of a cylinder, but still keep it natural, give it some variety, and I usually make it flare at the bottom where it hits the ground. Green are the branches, and there I'll do the same thing. In this case, I deleted some of those middle ones. You can add points and delete points. Now I make it a little thinner, and I go ahead and make it thick at the bottom. This is at the bottom where the green branch goes into the trunk. When I'm fairly happy with how my profile of the shape is, I know that I want it to be growth. Growth is going to make them all the same length. I just want them all the same length. But you can make them thinner at the bottom, smaller at the bottom. Once again, angle. I'm going to make them flare up, and then I'm going to use tropism to make them dip down. So on this one, I'm going to add a real strong gravity in -y. I go to the intensity of this, tropism, and I turn it way up. I want a big arc. Notice that I have arced it so much that you can see a little bit of nickeling there. So I have to go to the path smoothing and just give it a couple more polygons. Notice my grow variable works just fine. That's one of those things you can animate at any time. So now I'm constructing that thing. But now I'm going to build the leaf. The leaf is from 2 curves. That is my shape curve, and this one is going to be my path curve. And these are really simple curves. They're just, 2 points. Leaf shape, leaf path. And now I'm going to put those guys into a branch. So I make a branch and throw away the curves that made that branch. And these guys are going to go in there. So first, I do +sign on the path, and then +sign on the shape. And there is my branch which is really just going to be a leaf. I have a material with an alpha channel, shape of a leaf, and I just applied it in there. I make growth, so it makes a square now. I just have a square polygon, and I shrink the whole thing down by shrinking down my curves. There they are. And I know that it's 1 to 2 is my ratio, so it's a rectangle. And then I'm going to apply that as a child. That leaf is now a child of my green branch. And there they are. I can have, hundreds on there or just 2. And I've got my little branches starting to make shape. That's the shape of my leaves. They're bent in this case. You can make them super complicated zigzag or just nice flats, whatever you want. But I'm going to do this fast, just showing the grow feature, make sure that still works. And now I have the bottom half of my thing ready. Some things I can do is arrangement. I can arrange those leaves to be perpendicular along the branch as they go down. There's a lot of things I can do to adjust these. Here I'm twisting them as they go down. So it's not a perfect fan, but they're at different rotations as they go down the lifetime of the branch. Now I'm going to add some tropism. I'm going to add it directly to each leaf path. So now each leaf is going to hang down a bit more. First my branch is hanging down, and now my leaves are hanging down. Remember, with that tropism, you can have it go in any direction you want. In this case, I'm just doing towards gravity. Later, I'll show you how that works. Then I'm going to copy this branch. And this upper branch I'm going to call branch high. This one is going to have the flowers on it. So I make it the head of the first one. Always turn off growth inherit so you get the full thing at the end. And now I'm going to change the shaders. I'm getting close. I'm going to have the green stuff at the bottom and the yellow flowers at the top. So first let's shrink it down a touch. I think I got a little too large there. So I'm taking the path curve that makes the branch. And then I'm going to apply some shaders. I put the brown on everything on top and then the yellow. And that's a yellow rectangle. I really want it to be a square. So I need my path and my shape to both be the equal size. So it's no longer a rectangle. I need both of them to be 0.1. And that way I'll get a square polygon. And once again, I have a material where it's an alpha map of a flower. And I just put it on there, and they will all take it in. Now, I can start, playing with the size of each branch. I want those guys to be a little shorter. And, I might need them thicker at one point. These are things that I'll play with as I start building. But one thing I would like to talk about is maybe getting a little motion in here. So let's make less leaves and less flowers, and I'll try a little bit of motion. Let's see what I'm going to do here. Here I'm showing how you can turn the leaves. So not only can you turn the leaves, you can keyframe it. So I'm going to put a value at 160 and 120, and I'm going to keyframe this point. And using this feature, you can simulate a wind type of situation. Every single variable can be keyframed in here. And in this case, I want something with a little noise. So that way each leaf gets a different motion. By using the I variable, it's an iterative variable. Each one gets a different thing. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the upper flowers. In fact, I'm only going to choose to do it on these curves. So in these curves, I add a CurveNurbs to my main thing. So I replaced a simple path, put in CurveNurbs, and then I can make it longer, shorter. I can programmatically change the thing. And in this case, I'm just doing a rotate variable, and I'm going to key it. I'm going to key it at 160 and 120, and just put the variables in there. Now I can, as the time passes, I have some nice ambient motion. That's how we do wind effects or moving effects, any sort of animation in a tree. You just want a little touch of motion. So now, I like the branch, but I want to look at tropism here. Gravitropism is going to make those leaves and those branches always go towards the ground, -y. I'm missing one thing. The main branch in the center should also have tropism. So I hit tropism, and then I hit the plus sign on curve, and now I've put the curve that makes the flower branch into tropism. You can just mix and match these things as much as you'd like. I raise the intensity, and now anytime I move that branch, it's always going to be leaning down towards the ground. I put the whole thing back to 0. Now, I bring up my trunk, and I'm going to make this guy a child. So I do branch, and then trunk, and then child. But before I do that, I need more leaves. Yeah, let's make it more like a golden shower. Let's make it flowing with leaves. I want a lot of green, and then I want these like streaks of yellow. So I'll pick some node numbers, 14, 30, 10. Everything's always like a default of 10. And I'm going to copy the first one so I can use the second one as a backup. And I hit child. And now that one main branch becomes a child of all of my branches on the tree. Now that's a pretty good start. In my main tree, in my trunk, I have 2 other trunks to put them on there. So here, I'm going to go back to my my little branch that I was working on, and I've got this extra copy down here. I copy and paste it because I want to make just variations. I'm going to make this thing 4 different times. And here, I just did child on the other big branch. So now, both of my 2 branches under variation have children branches. And the other thing I want to do is I want some smaller, shorter ones to go at the head of each big branch. So right now, each big branch has like a tunnel, like an end to it. I'm going to put this smaller stubby branch at the head of each one. So I pick it, I hit head. And then it's going to pop right onto the head of each one. And I make 2 copies. I make them both a little different. And that's how I just force some variety in there. Now, I look at where they connect. And I'm going to make the root of my stubby part a little thicker so that the 2 sizes match up. And so it's one branch goes right into the other. Then I quickly turn on the GPU and see what we have. We have a pretty full-featured tree there. And that is really just 4 main branches copied multiple times, given some variety, and set up to be like the golden shower tree. Now, one other thing we could look at is, oh yeah, growth still works here. So growth works in all cases. I'm going to turn down the growth and turn down the number of some of the far-reaching ones, just so I can like shape the tree a touch more. Remember, everywhere that I put in CurveNurbs, I've got this length scale, so I can make those branches specifically smaller. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of trimming in the heavy stuff using both growth and length scale. Here we go, length scale of 15, and that's just going to shrink down just those variations. I've got many, many branches in here, and they're sort of set up in a, in a hierarchy where you can just flow up and down and work the variables to shape the tree any way you'd like. Now, I'll take a look at that in the renderer. That looks good. I've got my little ground there. The sun is shining on it. The shader work here is very basic. It's truly just to show the growing part rather than the rendering, but we'll get into that in another demo for sure. Another thing we may want to think about is how do we export these things out to another package? Before I do that, I'm just going to show a quick multiplier where I can shrink it down to hardly anything. Instead of 28 variations of the big one, I'm going to have 6 variations. And you could make 10 versions of this tree instantly just using the main trunk multiplier. That trunk multiplier is the one that decides how many low branches you have. Now here I'm showing the materials, and I'm going to pick a material and I'm going to say select all the objects for that material. So that's all the trunk and trunk low. I grab all those pieces out and I'm going to combine them and call it the trunk. This is for exporting out to other packages. So I again do the thing with the branches. I duplicate them all out, I unparent, I combine them, and then delete the history. And I name this branch. So each material there is going to have 1 polygon object. So in the end, I'm going to have 3 branch type objects that I combined. And because I have 5 materials, I'm going to have 5 polygon objects. And this is the fastest, easiest way to get it out to another package. There are multiple other techniques you can do, but we'll just do this one for now. We've got the 5 materials and the 5 polygon objects. Now here is my last one, the leaf object. I duplicate it, and then unparent it, then combine it, and then delete history. And that is the workflow to give you 5 materials and 5 polygon objects. That way you could export out to Unreal Engine, Blender, any engine you would like, another Maya file. Here I have file save, and in this way I have my original Xfrog and I have a duplicate, which is sort of just a bunch of polygons with the clean materials. I hope you've enjoyed the demo, and I will see you again. Thank you.